Very good. And we're not going to do a formal roll call because we're going to go through introductions in a moment where each person is going to have a chance to introduce themselves, and that's going to serve as our roll call. And also you have the opportunity to give your comment as to what you would like to see this task force accomplish. But on behalf of the Florida court clerks and comptrollers, who are sponsoring organizations, we're not a task force of the comptrollers and clerks organization, but we're being sponsored and staffed by them. And we certainly appreciate their leadership in this regard. And I saw our president of the association, Angel Canaliso, the clerk from Manatee County, who is participating in this meeting, and I appreciate her attendance. I also appreciate the staff support from the association. But the reason why the clerks thought this task force was so important, I think, is fairly apparent, and especially it's become more apparent as the past few months have taken place, not only nationally with the Britney Spears matter, but in the state of Florida with so many instances of newspaper stories showing issues involving the guardianship program in the state of Florida. It really is a time for us to look at our current structure in the state of Florida and to see where we can make improvements to protect the wards and make the system better. Florida has a reputation of being a state with a big elderly population, well-deserved. I know Representative Burton has been an advocate for the elderly in her work in the legislature. And this is something where we should be the leading state in the union as far as having the best guardianship program out of any 50 states. And we don't. That's the honest truth. And we need to take a look at it and see where we can make our system the best and most effective for the people it's supposed to protect. And so that's what this Guardianship Task Force is about. It's going to be a short-lived task force. This is not going to go on for years. We're going to get our work done quickly, and we're going to make recommendations for this upcoming legislative session where the legislature can consider. That's the purpose. This is not a court task force to make recommendations to the court for that long process of court rules, as the judge and the lawyers in the room know. But this is for the legislature to see where they can make legislative activity to improve the guardianship program in the state of Florida. I appreciate all of you accepting the invitation to be part of this task force. I think we've done a good job at creating a wide variety of interest here and a wide variety of perspectives. We probably are not going to agree with the many points that are up that we may recommend as a task force, but we'll see if we can get a darn good majority each time for our recommendations to the legislature. So I appreciate y'all being part of it. I also appreciate your flexibility. We intended to kick this off with a in-person meeting, but God had a different plan for us and gave us a little storm there on the west coast of Florida where our meeting was scheduled, and all our buildings were actually closed, including the college building we were going to meet in that day. But shows our flexibility, and we have this initial meeting by use of the WebEx, and then our next meeting, which of course is next Wednesday in person. I'm very delighted to see how many people have committed attending, so we appreciate that. I would again ask any person who's participating who's not a member of the task force, please turn off your video. It just helps the rest of us if you turn off your video if you're not a member of the task force. So that's the introduction. One of the things that we're going to be doing shortly after this meeting, Sarah is going to be sending you an email. Tom Hall and Sarah Sanders. Tom Hall is a former Supreme Court clerk, attorney, Mr. Expert on so many items. He's staffing this task force. Sarah Sanders, who is another exceptional person, very talented person, is also providing staff support for this task force. Tom is the one who will actually be drafting the report for us because, a committee of 20 people can't draft a report together. We need to assign that task to someone. And Tom, with his vast experience, has graciously agreed to put our thoughts into a document that we can put our recommendations in and provide the necessary background. Tom, as part of that, will be listing each of us. And so this afternoon, you're going to be receiving an email asking for a short biography The key word, folks, is short. We don't want to hear your life history. We don't want to know that your kids in Girl Scouts, and that was very good. But we're going to send you an example of one I did. I'm the guinea pig on this, of what's considered a short biography. And if you could pretty much follow that format, it would be appreciated. But this is the bio that will appear in the report, because we'll list each member and a short bio on them. So that's a little homework for after today's meeting. As you know, the format will be our in-person meeting next week. There, we're really going to review the guardianship program and how it currently works in the state of Florida, from a lawyer's perspective, from a clerk's perspective, and from the court's perspective. That will give us a chance to learn, so we're all in the same playing field as far as our knowledge of this. It will give us a primer on guardianships, and we can ask our many questions to these expert groups and panels that we have presenting to us. From there, we will have virtual meetings which will dive into certain topics. A lot of what you say today is going to help us determine future meeting agendas, but to get things started, we had to do some planning, and Anthony, who is our vice chair, is really going to be putting a panel together for our first virtual meeting after our in-person meeting, where it's going to be showcasing some of the issues around the state that have taken place. Some have been well publicized in newspaper articles. Others have been discovered through the Investigation Alliance, and highlighting some of the problems which have taken place. I think, again, we're not passing judgment on people. We're just trying to find out what has been the problem areas. You can't solve a problem unless you know what the problem is. And Anthony's going to help us show by past case studies of where problems and guardianships have existed in the state of Florida, so that we can potentially remedy those through our recommendations. The next meeting after that's another virtual meeting, and Tom Hall and Sarah Sanders, our two staff people, are going to be presenting mainly on that, or organizing. They're going to be looking at all this data which has come around, especially in this past year, of activity by legislators across the country which have been progressive in protecting the ward. I know we weren't supposed to do this while we're in college, but it's certainly acceptable in this arena to plagiarize from other best practices from other states. And that's what we'll be doing. We'll see, hey, if they've already invented the wheel and figured a good way of reform that further protects the ward and has a good system that's not costing a heck of a lot of money, but is effective, or putting in best policies or best practices, things we can adopt, we're going to be doing that. That's the function of Tom and Sarah to report at that meeting on best practices adopted by legislatures around the country. So I think that gives us a good kickstart as to our first 3 meetings of hearing information and asking questions, being informed, giving our input. But we need recommendations for our future meetings, and that's one of the purposes of today's meeting, is to get your ideas of what you'd like us to accomplish, and then we'll try to align our future agenda toward those items. I will ask you at this time to adopt our agenda that we have that was sent to you, and also to adopt the operating plan. Tom Hall came up with this operating plan. He's ran it through a few of us. I'm very grateful to Tom for putting this together. The operation plan, though, is something as a guidepost. We're not going to let this straitjacket us or put handcuffs on us. If we need to be flexible, we will be flexible. But this kind of gives us some type of operating procedure. So like any task force, you need some type of rules to govern us by. And this is going to be a loose set of rules. So I would ask someone at this point, if they would be so kind as to make a motion to adopt the agenda and to adopt the operation plan and guidelines which have been presented. And I'd be glad to answer any questions after the motion's made.
I'll make the motion, Ken. This is Crystal.
Crystal has made the motion. Is there a second?
I'll second. That's Mike Donovan.
Thank you, Mike. Now we'll ask if does anyone have any questions or comments concerning the operation plan that they would like to make. And again, we're going to be flexible on this, folks. So even if there's something here you may object to, we'll be as things go along, we'll make sure. But if you have any questions or comments, we certainly want to hear them. Seeing none, we'll move to the vote. All in favor, just raise your hand. Okay, great. Motion looks like it carried unanimously there, Karen. So those are, and we're having minutes taken. Not only is this meeting being recorded, we're having minutes taken from the, that will be published and put on our website. The association, the Clerks Association, has been very supportive too of providing their media department, helping us out. Kyle with the association, who's very talented, is doing a website for our Guardianship Task Force. That's also where your bios will appear, and also all the presentations will be housed there. The minutes of the meetings will be housed there, the agendas, and also a way for citizens to give us input. So we're trying to make this as transparent as possible. As the operation plan said, our meetings are going to be open to the public. We're going to have public comment at all future meetings, not at this particular one because it's just an organizational meeting, but all future meetings will have a segment for public comment. So we're taking that very seriously. Now we get to the part where you get to participate and I stop talking, which I'm sure everyone will be pleased about. And what we're asking you to do at this point is give us your thoughts. I know you've been asked to be on this task force. You've probably contemplated, like, gosh, what's this all about? And you probably have something you would like to see the task force accomplish. And so we're going to make a laundry list, and don't be afraid to repeat. There may be someone may bring up a topic, and you say that's exactly what I would like to see be accomplished as a main point. Karen Lamb's going to capture all these, and we'll put these in the minutes, and it's part of our plan and look at what you as task force members want to see this task force accomplish. I'm going to ask you to keep it to one item because I'm sure all of us or some of us have many items we would like to see the task force accomplish. But also at the same time, this is the opportunity for you to give us not a lifetime history of yourself, but a very short introduction to you, your role in this process, your interest, and also what you would like to see the task force accomplish. So we're going to try to each of us do this in 2 to 3 minutes. And I've kind of primed the pump by asking Anthony, our vice chair, to be the first. So Anthony, would you introduce yourself? And then also, if you would, tell us what you would like to see the Guardianship Improvement Task Force accomplish. Anthony.
Absolutely, and I don't mind being the guinea pig at all. So good afternoon. Again, my name is Anthony Palmieri, and I'm the Deputy Inspector General and Chief Guardianship Investigator for the Clerk of the Circuit Court of Comptroller's Office in Palm Beach County. I have several roles in Florida's guardianship system and in the world of guardianship in general. Locally, on behalf of Palm Beach County Clerk Joseph Abruzzo, I have audited, investigated, and advised the court on thousands of guardianship cases for well over about a decade, over a decade. At a statewide level, I'm the Chief Guardianship Investigator for the Clerks Statewide Investigation Alliance, providing investigative services to the Florida Department of Elder Affairs Office of Public and Professional Guardians. And I see Chante Jones on the screen, who's the Executive Director of the OPPG. And nationally, I am the President-elect of the National Guardianship Association, an organization that's dedicated to promoting national standards of excellence and ethical principles for guardians. As to what's the one, there's many things, but the one thing, first and foremost, we need to empirically understand what is occurring in guardianships and enable decision makers to make decisions based on that empirical data. For professional guardian investigations, our clerk's office and the Statewide Investigation Alliance measures, examines, reviews, logs, and tracks the allegations, investigative findings, disciplinary actions, and really everything in between. We track a lot of information. Because of the statistics that we collect, we understand the investigative process inside and out. In the same way, Florida needs to collect and measure data about the guardianship system as a whole. We need to better understand both our successes and our failures in guardianship. In my opinion, we should no longer base our decisions on anecdotal and sometimes sensational stories about bad guardians.
Yeah.
Yes, there is more than one bad guardian.
Noted, hey, I checked it, I couldn't find anything.
Yeah.
Karen, we could hear you, I think. Go ahead, Anthony. Anthony, you've been muted. Would you unmute yourself? Go ahead, Anthony.
That work?
Yes, now we're
Okay.
fine.
I was saying there is more than one bad apple that we've identified and ridden from the system. 11 professional guardians since 2017 to be more accurate. But those professional guardians, including the ones arrested, are still not representative of the overwhelming good guardianship going on in the state. And they are not representative of the fraud that is being committed by other professionals, fiduciaries, caregivers, and family members occurring in guardianship and other protective arrangements without any state-sponsored oversight as well. The bottom line is we need the data to prove or disprove what is working and not working to protect persons served by guardianship. We should not recommend changes based solely on a conservatorship gone awry in California, nor a fictional Netflix dark comedy. We can learn from these stories, but they should not be the sole reason for our decision-making. At this time and place, this is the single biggest problem in guardianship, and I know it's been a long time, it's gone a long time without being addressed locally, nationally, and globally. No one is sufficiently collecting data and statistics about guardianship to understand, in Florida's case, a large guardianship system. And I can't tell you accurately for sure how many active and open guardianships there are in the state. I can take a guess, but it's only a guess. We should know, but we don't. What about the average age of persons served by guardianship? How about their gender or ethnicity? We should know all of that. I always wonder, what about their incapacity? Do we serve people with Alzheimer's, developmental or intellectual disabilities, traumatic brain injuries, or substance abuse problems? How about who is petitioning and alleging incapacity? Is it the attorneys? Is it the guardians, DCF, or family members? I would love to know these questions, these answers to these questions, and so much more. In my opinion, with one of the oldest populations and largest guardianship systems in the world, it's imperative that Florida collects data and statistics. So, Chairman Burke,
thank you, Anthony.
I had a tough time narrowing it down to 3 minutes, but I just want to close by saying, to truly modernize the guardianship system, giving autonomy and dignity and respect, that should be our focus. And I want to thank you very, very much. I've had the great fortune to speak about guardianship all over the country and internationally. And I can tell you, guardianship works best when it's done collaboratively and not just from one singular perspective. So I thank everyone for allowing us to work on these issues collaboratively. Thank you.
Thank you, Anthony. And to summarize, data is king with Anthony, and that's what he's looking at. So we'll go to Sean Cadigan. Would you please go next and introduce yourself first and tell us the one thing you would like to see the task force accomplish?
All right. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
I am one of the magistrates in Tampa's Guardianship and Mental Health Courts, and was originally appointed at the end of 2000 over in the 6th Circuit for Pinellas County and moved over to Hillsborough County. So I have some experience in both of the circuits with their guardianship, and it has helped our relationship with that court. And since our residents and wards go back and forth, that's a real positive thing. And in 2007, I took over the supervisory responsibilities for our court's Elder Justice Center, which is a very unique court program that provides a lot of assistance to the 3 guardianship judges in our county, and does guardianship case management, review of professional guardian files, and guardian fees, and helps with some administrative duties relating to our guardianship examining committee, and even serves on a case-by-case basis by specific appointment as court monitors. And so I'm happy to be part of this. The one thing I was thinking of that I would like to see the task force tackle is better sharing of information, particularly with regard to disciplinary matters relating to professional guardians, because we have seen sort of a shift in some guardians from other parts of the state trying to move our way when they're physically not even located in our county. And We would question why someone on the other side of the state might want to have a practice here. And we believe that we need the information about their disciplinary history to make determinations of whether or not we actually add them to our list in our county.
Great answer. Thank you. And thank you for serving. It's appreciated. Representative Burton, it's great to have you as part of the task force and you taking the time from your tremendously busy schedule. But I know this is an area that you are very passionate about, so we're glad you're part of it. Love to hear from you, ma'am.
Thank you, Ken, for that introduction. And I am delighted to be here. It's interesting. I think it was Anthony just talked about anecdotal data, which really isn't data. And in my notes, if I could show you my sheet of notes here, I wrote down statewide data set. So we're on the same page, absolutely on the same page, because as you can imagine, a lot of what I hear, and I have, I should tell you, I am, for those who don't know, I chair the Florida House Health and Human Services Committee. I have had the privilege of sponsoring a number of bills over my time in the Florida House related to guardianship and other elder protection issues. So having said that, I have a breadth of experience across many issues. But he's absolutely right. A lot of what we learn and what we work from on this issue it can be considered anecdotal. Now it's anecdotal from the clerks, from guardians, from families, from attorney. We get a lot of it. There's a great mix. And I'm really happy we've had participation of some of you in conversations about some of the legislation that we have passed over the recent years. But I think a gathering like this was important. It is important because I find myself probably very much being in the position with us on this task force if we're going to make a recommendation to the legislature, well, guess where I am? I'll be the person at least helping to figure out a way if that we can actually implement some of the recommendations that come out of this task force. So I'm really honored to be here with all of you. I'm really thrilled to be part of a group with such a breadth of knowledge and experience in this area. And I look forward to participating in the very few months, as you said, Ken, moving forward before we come up with a recommendation set.
And Representative Burton, I know you represent Polk County. Does your area expand beyond that, or is that the county you represent?
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I represent actually Polk County, and really specifically, I'm very much in the city of Lakeland area. I have one of the true compact districts in the state of Florida when it comes to Florida House members.
It's a beautiful city, Lakeland. So
thank you.
There's a little grocery store out at that county too. So
there's a little one. There's a little one. Yeah, you might starts with a P. Yeah, it's all over the place.
Well, thank you, and thank you again for serving on this. Chante, we certainly appreciate hearing from you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you. So I'm Chante Jones, the Executive Director of the Office of Public and Professional Guardians, housed here within the Department of Elder Affairs. I'm representing today Secretary Prudhomme in his absence. And so what we'd like to, or I think we'd like to get from participating in the task force is just an opportunity for the department and the office to strengthen our partnerships with stakeholders across the state in guardianship. And the task force will also allow us to hear some of the firsthand discussions regarding some of the proposed changes, some of the concerns of those guardians, advocates, and our wards, just to better serve our wards of the state. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for representing the department today. It's certainly appreciated. We usually don't allow substitutes, but we felt with the Department of Elder Affairs, it's such an important, integral part of this process that we want the representation here today, Chante, and we appreciate you taking the time to be with us.
Oh, thank you.
Good secretary. We miss him, though.
I sure will. Thank you.
Crystal.
Thanks, Ken. I have been overseeing the guardianships here in Collier for going on 17 years now. Even though I was just elected clerk about 3 years ago, I've been with the agency for 17 years. And so obviously through our audit department, I know that it is an area that we could do more. And primarily my focus I would like to elevate to the public and to users of the system the confidence that we do care for their belongings, their information, and we are stewards that can protect them. So so often I hear criticisms of what happened to my money, or how did this happen, and what went wrong, and we do the investigations on some of these things. So I would like to just ensure that we tighten everything that we can for the wards, and just elevate that perception of the whole guardianship program, that it's important to the protection of our seniors. And thank you for including me, and I appreciate it from the association, and look forward to working with everyone.
Thank you, Crystal. And Crystal obviously is very dedicated to this matter. She's devoted a couple decades to the guardianship issues, but also she's a close friend of Senator Pasadoma, and it would be
You always have to put that in, right?
well, I bring it in because it's an important priority.
And let me tell you,
She could be Senate President a year from now, and the guardianship enhancement is something which is dear to her heart. And so that's something too, which in forming this task force, we want to make sure we had her support in forming this task force, because, and Crystal was a big key in making that communication happen.
well, I should, thank you, Ken. I should mention that because I've known Kathleen for 20 some, whoa, let's see, 30 years almost here in Collier, far before any of us were elected to anything. So yes, and this elder care has been one of her passions, and something that she, I know, cares strongly about. So when I had the opportunity, I did jump and I said, hey, I'll work with them. But yes, she's very involved and wants to know everything we're doing. So
because we want this task force to be a success. And Representative Burton will certainly tell you, in legislation, it's hard to pass legislation. So at times you need all the stars to align properly to make it happen. And that's what we're hoping to have happen too, because having a great report and great recommendations, if it goes nowhere, that doesn't make much meaningful difference. We want this to, and that's one of the reasons I want to mention about Senator Pasadoma. She did ask she's very busy. When you're going to be Senate President, that means you have to go around the state and do a lot of things. She really contemplated serving on this, but the better instincts got to her of time management. And so Senator Jennifer Bradley was kind enough to accept being on this. Unfortunately, she had a conflict today and couldn't be here. So we have a senator who will serve on is serving on the task force. Now, a good friend of mine who I've had lots of meetings with and is very passionate about the guardianship program, Hillary Hogue. Hillary, would you please introduce yourself?
I will. And first, thank you, Ken, for inviting me to serve. My name is Hillary Hogue, and I am here proudly representing the wards of the state of Florida and what they have gone through. A brief synopsis of how I got here was my father was put through a guardianship in the 20th Circuit of the Middle District, Naples. Our family was blindsided. I reached out to some people who are on the task force with us, and I wasn't given any help. Miraculously, my father and I signed a settlement agreement. We would have cut our arms and legs off to keep him out of guardianship. And I could have easily gone back to a normal semblance of life. But what I experienced in guardianship has given me a purpose that I've never had in my life. I take calls from victims 7 days a week. I do not get paid for anything that I do concerning guardianships. And I look forward to collaborating with everyone on this task force to make changes in the guardianship system. It has nothing to do with I Care a Lot, Brittany, or anything else. It has to do with victims who are living in guardianship, and they need to have a voice. We need to hear from them and have their perspective on what they think. And Ken has been so kind, and he's listened, and we're here today. And I have so much stuff in front of me, but I will say, and I know that I'll get pushback, there needs to be caps on fees. A guardian should not be able to make $250,000 in 10 months. There's no way there should be a cap on guardianship cases. How many a guardian can take? Lawyers shouldn't be making so much money and eager to litigate for years. And the ward is left without money. So finally, again, I will thank you, and I will read a short letter from a ward of the state of Florida. And of course, I've changed the names to prevent any retaliation. My name is John Smith. I've been part of this case since March of 2020, and yet to have a voice. I want to make it clear that my wife and I have an estate plan and advance directives, and they were never followed. We want them followed. I've told everyone from the start, we want our rights respected. We worked hard our entire life and don't believe that a court should have any say in my finances or how I live out the remainder of my life at 93 years of age. I've been dragged through the mud regarding my capacity and I'm upset with the court for putting me through this. I fought in World War II and Korea for my rights and for your rights. And I deserve to keep them all. I want my daughter to keep taking care of me and paying my bills. I just lost my wife of 66 years 5 months ago, and now I have to deal with this. It's completely unfounded and unacceptable. We live in America, and we deserve our rights to be respected, especially when there is a plan in place, and I have one. I cannot believe that a year of my life has been wasted and that the parties in the court have justified putting me in a guardianship. Please, I'm begging you, give me back my rights. This is why I dedicate my life, and I really look forward to working together to make changes. Thank you, Ken, and thank you, fellow task force members.
Thank you, Hillary. And no one questions your integrity and your advocacy for this issue. It's admirable.
Thank you.
Dennis Moore, certainly glad to have you as part of the task force.
Well, thank you very much, Ken, and it's an honor to be included with this group on this task force. And you know, many of the things that have been said here today, I certainly echo that. I mean, in my career, I've been a part of the child welfare system for about 20 years. Worked for the Department of Children and Families, part of a legislative pilot project in the 9th Judicial Circuit, studying representation of children by guardian ad litem and attorney ad litems. You know, there's some differences between, you know, what we do, obviously, and what Chante and those folks do. I mean, we're limited in scope by the ad litem designation and some other things in statute. You know, so I've worked primarily in that arena, and I've been in private practice for a while, labor and employment law and appeals mostly. And then I came back to this in 2012, general counsel under Alan Abramowitz, who just recently retired. I worked for him for about 10 years. Great man, great individual. And got actual big shoes to fill. If you know him personally, they are literally big shoes. But I'm the interim executive director now. And the one thing that I can tell you that when I think about this that I tend to focus on is we ran a bill in 2015, or shall we say we assisted Representative Atkins and Senator Dieter to run a bill that was looking to get guardianships for children that were aging out of the child welfare system. And we had a tragic event which occurred with a minor that had aged out, and a young man that was out there on his own. Subsequently was killed on his own. And when we did that bill, it was very successful. And I think part of the success was that we focused on, with some other advocacy groups, making sure that we did it in the least restrictive means possible. That means interfered in the life of the ward in the least intrusive manner that we could figure out. And so at the time, I believe we were working with the Disability Independence Group, was the group we were primarily working with on that one. So if I have one issue to put out there for the group, I think it's whatever direction we had, keep an eye on that, focusing on that narrowness in terms of allowing someone, let's say, with a lower functioning IQ to, you know, still maintain as much a part of their management of their life as possible. Through guardianship. Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis. You froze up at the end, but we got what you were saying. And we appreciate you being part of this task force. There may be some things we can learn from the Guardian Ad Litem program that we can apply here as far as volunteer advocates, and that's something we maybe want to look at. And so we may be asking you to talk about the model and how the Guardian Ad Litem program works. And also, I thought your point about we think of guardianships and we often think of the elderly, but that's not the case. There's many minor guardianships due to lawsuits that have been filed and so forth, and settlements which have been awarded or for different circumstances. And that's part of the thing that we're going to learn next week during our in-person meeting from the lawyer, is the different types of guardianships and how they get established and why they get established. So again, I appreciate your being part of this, and I think you're going to add a wonderful perspective to our work. Gina, certainly like to hear from you now.
Hi, I'm Gina Rossi, the Executive Director of the Florida State Guardianship Association. Our association has about 500 guardians, attorneys, clerks, case managers, and folks who are out there doing the work of guardianship every day. I have been with the Florida State Guardianship Association for about 10 years. I've served as a private and a public guardian in Florida. I've even worked with Guardian Ad Litem in Florida. I worked for the Illinois Guardianship and Advocacy Commission for 10 years. And so my entire career has been in guardianship, making sure that vulnerable people have the protection and the dignity that they deserve. The majority of guardians that I meet every day, 10 years in and out of being the FSGA director, are good guardians who are very serious about the difficult work that they do. If there's a story about guardianship, you can believe that I've heard it with my members, the hundreds of community members who call me during the year. And so there's lots of ways I feel that the guardianship system could be improved. I really want to echo what Anthony and some of the other stakeholders talked about today, which is I know what is said in the community, and I know what people think from all aspects of this issue, but I don't have any data in front of me that helps me look and see what the problem is, how these problem areas are occurring, where they're occurring, the scope of the problem. Are these educational problems? Are they gaps in oversight? Until that we have the data in front of us that exemplifies what's going on, I feel it's going to be tough to make a recommendation on what needs to happen. There are so many ways the system can improve. Having said that, I'm looking forward to getting those hard numbers in front of me to kind of look and work with this group on solutions to what are the actual problems, and to make sure that we are strengthening our commitment to make sure that guardians are educated, are ethical, and that the people that we're serving are getting the best type of care and respect possible. And that's what the Florida State Guardianship stands for. We stand for education and professionalism of our members. And most importantly, we're concerned about the people who are served under guardianship. I'm happy to be here, and I'm looking forward to getting the type of information that we need to make some good recommendations. Additionally, I will say I would like to see some more guardian representation on the task force. There are hundreds of folks out there doing this very difficult work every day. And as you guys know, the systems are so different across the state. and the parameters are so different. So it would be great to have a little bit of more of a sampling of guardians to, work through the experiences. But again, thank you. Thanks, Ken. And I appreciate inviting me to the task force. Thanks.
Thank you, Gina, and thank you for being part of it. And we certainly welcome guardians participation through our public comments, and also through at our website. We're going to have a robust part where people can make comments and suggestions and give input there. That will be of value. So we certainly do invite people. Just because we couldn't get everyone on this task force, we do want to invite that public input. And Gina, unfortunately, a lot of what you said, we're not going to be able to provide, because that's the problem. We don't have the data in a uniform. But I think you're going to see one of the big recommendations coming out of this task force. I don't want to put the cart before the horse, but the need for better data and a system of gathering that data. So let's move on to my good friend and colleague, the clerk from Okaloosa County, J.D. Peacock.
Thank you, Ken. I appreciate it. One thing I wanted to bring up is my background. I had a 25-year run in law enforcement here in Okaloosa County before I became clerk. So public safety is in my heart and something that I take seriously. And upon becoming the clerk or running for clerk, I understood the role of the clerk's office in the guardianship process and how important it was to look out for the wards. And really, the point that I wanted to bring up is, this is a example of a citizen's liberty being impaired by the state's power for good reason. Obviously, we have many great family, public, and professional guardians that do amazing work. That's very hard, very difficult work across the state, but it's a system that has a lot of players in it for oversight. And at the end of the day, really what I want to see come out of it is continue strengthening the fact that every single player in the system for guardianship in Florida, their primary role is looking out for the ward, the benefits of the ward, and at the end of the day, the liberty of the ward and how they conduct their lives. And so I certainly want to make sure that any recommendation continues to make sure that everybody acts on the benefit of the ward. Nobody has some other incentive besides the ultimate service of the ward. And so that's really my goal here. I'm certainly value being part of the team. Thank you, Ken, for your leadership. Thank you, Anthony, for your leadership on the statewide alliance, as well as all the other stakeholders. It takes a team to do all of this. There's a lot of moving parts, and I certainly want to be part of the team to help strengthen the program. And I tend to agree that the data issue statewide is something we really need to tackle, and I hope that is a significant priority for us. So thank you so much, Ken.
Thank you, JD. Appreciate you. Judge Rodriguez, it's so important to have the perspective of the judiciary on this. I know we have Mr. Cadigan, but we appreciate you being here as an expert in this field, and we certainly look forward to your introduction and your comments, sir.
Well, Mr. Cadigan has to follow the judicial rules. I am no longer a judge. I am retired, so I can say that I have been unmuzzled. So I reserve the right, and I will speak my mind and will explain what the frustrations of being in the robe and on the bench and having to handle these cases where judges are asked to take part but still remain impartial. I am currently I'm a GAL. My practice now as a lawyer is basically pro bono, which means I do what I do and I refuse to charge. I am the chairman on the statewide basis of WINGS Florida. That's a working interdisciplinary network of guardianship stakeholders that the Florida Supreme Court passed on over to Stetson Law School to manage everyone coming together to assist on an ongoing basis to improve and to comment on legislation regarding guardianship. as well as what we're doing currently. I'm also the co-chair with Melinda Coulter of a pilot program that we've designed for the Ninth and Second Circuit because of demographic differences to establish based on the ABA model, ABA AARP model of the court visitors, to go ahead and start a court visitor program utilizing law students. Since I teach at Berry Law School, I have a fertile field of young individuals who want to and have a real passion for this. I developed the curriculum. I sold it to the faculty, and we've been teaching it. What I saw on the bench was a real lack of knowledge about guardianship, and nobody taught it, or very few places taught it. I know that Shannon Miller every now and again has basically subbed, and at the University of Florida has done that. I know that it's done in I think in St. Thomas, but it's not a continuing curriculum that we're going to try to establish and continue. What I would like to see this group do is not just unified data collection, but to include in data collection what would be most helpful to those of us having to make decisions. And that is a unified system of tracking financial information. If we could have that on a statewide basis, it would be absolutely phenomenal, because we would be able to provide accountability for somebody who practices in one county and then moves along to another to avoid accountability. And I've got stories that I can tell you where we had one individual that charged 41 hours worth of work for in a 24-hour day. And I don't know what rocket ship that person was to keep going and extend the day, but that's just one. And I think that, and what happened was that our folks, our court monitor, which is also something that I would hope we can recommend to preserve, expand, and increase the education out there about what court monitors can do. That would be, as well as work them in with the volunteer court visitors, because it's a great hand-in-hand operation. And with court visitors, what we can wind up also doing is making sure that not only is there enhanced accountability, but also assist guardians who request a court visitor in the establishment and the assistance towards reaching recovery of rights, and perhaps in suggestions of capacity circumstances to assist the guardians and the wards in presenting to the court why, with again a report being written as to why this individual's rights should be restored. So it is a real holistic approach when we're dealing with finance, tracking finances, having court monitors and court visitors, volunteer court visitors, working together with clerks, with guardians, with guardian attorneys, with the ward and the ward's family, to be able to, again, to push forward towards a recovery of right and capacity. Again, I had the pleasure and the privilege. I was sort of, while my turn on the bench, I retired in January of 2019. But while I was on the bench, I was part of the judicial faculty that on a regular basis went to conferences and taught. Since 1991, I was a certified judicial instructor. In 2019, I retired, as I mentioned, in January. In May, I taught a course at the Advanced College of Judicial Studies conference on guardianship. We put together an entire day. Only 11 individuals, only 11 judges from around the state came. But when we started talking about accountability and court monitoring, it was incredible to find that many of our colleagues on the bench had never heard of what a court monitor does. And I think the reticence there to appoint them is because the payment has to come from, generally, the payment as the statutes envision come from the ward. And I don't think, I think judges don't necessarily want to do that. But again, unified data collection, unified system of tracking finances. Again, that I think is what I would love for us to consider and come up with recommendations.
Thank you, Your Honor. We certainly appreciate that. We appreciate that perspective. I was going to stay away from editorial comments, but you know, there's an exciting program in Palm Beach County, and Anthony developed it called the Giraffe System, capturing financial information. And that's something that we probably should look at as a potential statewide solution. But anyway.
I think you've hit you've hit the nail on the head. And quite frankly, the reason that I'm aware of that program, I was aware of that program when I was on the bench. I was aware, and I've been aware of the program since we had a presentation for one of our wings meetings. So it is very much in the front of my mind. And I can tell you that that is the kind of stuff that would really, really, really help. It would prevent the Rebecca Fearleys.
Yep. Thank you, sir.
My pleasure, my privilege.
And if we could just prevent that, that'd be a good thing. We're going to go a little bit out of order here, you know, and I don't want to give too much credit to my association, but I'm going to give it. You know, the Clerks Association is considering this guardianship issue. We're looking external. This does nothing to help clerks as far as, you know, enhancing, you know, our funding or anything like that. We're not looking, there's no self-serving purpose. But it takes a lot of resources to staff a task force like this. And I am so grateful for the leadership of the Clerks Association for their willingness to put this task force together and staff it. Because the staffing and even the meetings and so forth, even though you all have to pay your own hotel if you're staying over, it's expensive to run these meetings and to have all the resources. Tara Green, the clerk from Clay County, was our president last year, who's under leadership. This task force was given the green light and the funding necessary by the association. And I would certainly appreciate, and she doesn't know I'm going to call on her, and but she's pretty good on her feet, to recognize Tara Green and ask her just to make some comments of welcome and the importance of this task force. Ms. Green.
Thank you, Clerk Burke. Well, first of all, yes, welcome everyone. And listening to everybody's introductions, even though I kind of knew who most of you were and where you were in the so-called industry, I think it's safe to say that we have quite a phenomenal all-star team coming together for this task force. So I really appreciate those that accepted the offer to join it. I think that your work is going to be monumental. And I think it's going to be a game changer for the state of Florida. So that's a huge undertaking, and it's going to be a huge accomplishment. You know, I will say Ken, Clerk Burke, and Pinellas, like all of us, are pretty compassionate about this particular topic. It comes right down to our communities, even for some of us, our own loved ones. So you have a phenomenal leader as chair who's going to help and run this task force, along with all the expertise that each of you offer. And he actually was the one that came to me and suggested that, you know, we step out and we take the lead and we forge ahead with a statewide task force with people just like you to fix some really significant deficiencies and issues within guardianship in the state of Florida. So my hat's off to Clerk Burke. He's a phenomenal leader, and I think you guys will enjoy him. He can be funny from time to time, so that's good. I also want to thank the two that I asked to join Ken as representations of the clerks, and to Clerk Burke's point, you know, this is not about the guardians. This is not about the clerks. This is not about any of us necessarily here on the call. It's about those that are in need of these services. And I love hearing that that's the compassion that everybody's coming forward with on the table. But I do want to thank Clerk Peacock out of Okaloosa and Clerk Kenzel out of Collier. They accepted the ask to join this task force because it's going to be a huge lift, but I think it's going to be time well spent and conversation well spent. And I think this is the beginning, in my opinion. I think there's more to come. So I'm looking forward to it. I'm super excited about it. We in Clay County, I'm in Clay County. We just spent some time with Clerk Burke in his county, and we see some significant needs that need to take place. So I'm looking forward to what comes out of this task force because I think our citizens and our communities deserve better, quite frankly. So just to each of you, thank you. The new president, Angel Coloniso, is on, so she will be carrying the torch forward. I am not going anywhere because this is of near and dear importance to me, so I will be hopefully listening and watching the good work of this task force evolve over the next several months. So thank you all very much.
Thank you, Tara, and thank you again for your leadership. It's certainly appreciated. We appreciate you being with us today. Now we move on to more task force members and your input. And Karen, great to have you as part of this and representing the Attorney General's office. Karen, you're recognized. Please tell us about yourself and something you would like to see this task force accomplish.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you. I am thrilled to be here, and I will avoid going in and rehashing what everybody has said, but this is a wonderful group, and I'm excited to participate on it. I work with the Florida Office of the Attorney General. I'm an assistant statewide prosecutor for our Office of Statewide Prosecution, and I'm also our senior protection team coordinator here in the office. And I am a prosecutor and have handled, unfortunately, numerous exploitation prosecutions during my career involving guardians. And these cases are incredibly frustrating, incredibly complex. They are, and at the end of the day, it's just devastating to see the impact that this has on everybody involved in the process. And I think that if I had a specific goal to underscore today, it would be kind of to echo Magistrate Cadigan's point earlier about the sharing of information, more transparency and flow of information with investigative authorities, both civil and criminal. So that we have earlier detection when there are issues, so that we potentially can intervene before something makes it to the point of being a crime that requires prosecution. Because as we've already heard from others today, we definitely need to instill more confidence in our guardianship system by the public. And I don't think that seeing guardianship prosecutions for exploitation splashed across the front page headlines does anything to help that. So I definitely would like to do what we can to identify and target and stop those issues before they become a full-fledged criminal investigation. But thank you very much for allowing me to participate, and I am looking forward to the next couple months of this.
Thank you so much. And we certainly know Attorney General Ashley Moody has a big interest in this topic too. And that matters a lot when we're trying to accomplish some changes to this, and we appreciate her good support. So please pass on our good wishes to her and thank her for her support of guardianship reform.
Absolutely, thank you.
The Florida Department of Veterans Affairs is another important organization as part of this. And Bob, we certainly like to hear from you, and I know you're going to offer a great perspective to this task force.
Well, good. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate being invited to participate in the task force. My name is Bob Astalis, and I am the Deputy Executive Director of the Florida Department of Veterans Affairs. A little bit of background on me. I come out of the nursing home industry. I've worked within the industry, primarily doing government affairs for more decades than I'd like to say. I've worked with Representative Burton on guardianship bills. And also, I've seen what our long-term care providers have had with the challenges to the guardianship program. But my perspective is for Florida Department of Veterans Affairs, and as you may know, we operate 7, soon to be 9 long-term care facilities. So the guardianship program, working well for our veterans, is important. And I just look forward to being able to provide guidance from the veterans community to the task force and input as to how these recommendations would impact both veterans in the home and community-based side and then within our institutions. So thank you very much for letting me participate.
Thank you, Bob. It's certainly good to have you as part of it. Shannon, I'd like to hear from you, please, from the elder law section of the Florida Bar.
Hi, I'm Shannon Miller. I am a guardianship attorney in Gainesville, Florida, and I am the treasurer of the elder law section of the Florida Bar. And I am also a guardian for a young man, and I've been appointed as his guardian since 2003. Unknowingly by a judge who needed someone to serve for him. He's a developmentally disabled adult. And I have over the years served as guardian in a number of pro bono cases, in particular in working with developmentally disabled adults, mostly from Talcachali, which is a facility in Gainesville. So I have worked with Representative Burton and with Senator Pasadomo really since 2012. We started looking at changes to the criminal exploitation laws, and I started working on the task force with several prosecutors as well as a variety of stakeholders in improving exploitation started back in 2012. We didn't get a bill passed until 2014. And I've been very active at the legislature, working on various work groups to improve guardianship laws, in particular, dealing with DNR orders and dealing with various aspects of the statute. I will say that I am also an active guardianship attorney. I have a lot of cases in serving as guardian, and I definitely think there are things that we can clearly improve. I'll go back to what Judge Rodriguez was talking about related to court monitors. And that's, if there was one thing that I would like to kind of vet and see if we can do better with across the state. I know in Orlando, they have the benefit of Winter Solomon Cuthbert doing their court monitor work there, but we don't have that in Gainesville. I'd love to see court monitors become more activated and also address the streamlining of their service and also how they're funded. I think that will be very important. I will say that as an attorney who practices in this area, it is a horrifying area of law to practice in. Honestly, as elder law attorneys, you'll learn that we do everything before we do guardianships. We try and set up other types of estate planning, try to do voluntary guardianship, anything we can do to avoid incapacity guardianships, because it's not fun for the person going through that process, as has been described here. And so, as I'm listening to a lot of this, I just want to be sure that we always are mindful of, the privacy of someone going through this process and making sure that we continue to protect people's privacy, because being an incapacitated ward is not fun. And so I'm going to be the little voice about privacy for our people. But I really look forward to this task force and working with all of you. So many of you I know, and I just am thrilled to be part of this. So thank you.
Well, Shannon, thank you for being part of it. I don't know you, but from that background, I'm more excited that you're part of this. And you offer a lot of different perspectives there. And the perspective of weighing the transparency of a guardianship file with the confidentiality is a delicate matter, and one which is good for this task force to take a look at. I'm not sure how much of that's court rules and how much can be done in statute, but we won't worry about that for right now. But thank you, Shannon, for being part of this.
Thank you.
Mike Donovan, you offer certainly a different perspective from probably the rest of us here, and we're so glad you're part of it. Would you please introduce yourself and tell us about what you consider the big priority.
Okay, found it. Yeah, I work for Legal Services of North Florida. First, I was not going to be able to make the meeting in person in Clearwater a couple weeks ago. Next week I will be there, but I'm not sure I've told anybody I'll be there. So I will. Second, I don't want to downplay anyone who's dealt with the bad side of guardianship, but I come from a different place. 95% of the cases I've been on, the guardianship is badly needed. I deal with entirely wards. I've never represented someone wanting to be a guardian. I deal with the people who are proposed to be wards or are. Most of them get an $800 a month disability check, or they're in a facility and are unfortunately past the point where they can understand much of anything. Many of them don't even know that I'm talking to them. And I think I've had 2 cases total where there was maybe a suspicion of actions the guardian was taking. I've had hundreds where we were so thankful that anyone was willing to be the guardian. And for them, it's too expensive. They have to get an attorney. Every week, we have people coming into my office needing to get guardianships over their mother or their child or some other relative. They have no money. The ward has no money. We have a couple of attorneys that will take cases for free, but we can't overload them. And so I have a lot of things I want to see with this task force, but that may be the biggest one.
And boy, Mike, it's so important. Again, next week on Wednesday, we have an attorney who's listening into this today, who's going to present about, and that's one of the biggest challenges. What are all the different, like, why do people establish a guardianship? You know, some are established from hospitals and nursing homes. That's the big source. Some are minors. Some are people with great wealth who've become incompetent or may have alleged being incompetent. Some are people with no wealth at all and no assets. And I think that's the hard part about this, is trying to make recommendations that obviously some of the data things, you know, that doesn't matter anything I just said, because you still need the data. But part of how to go about with guardianships and protections and rules, it's very difficult when you have all these different, one size doesn't fit all. So, and Mike, you certainly point that out, and your perspective be very valued on this. Zane from AARP, certainly appreciate hearing from you and appreciate you being part of the task force.
Yeah, thank you for the invite, and I'll try to be brief. Obviously, Zane Smith with AARP Florida. I'm an associate state director of advocacy, so I focus on issues here in Florida and then at the federal level with our members of Congress. So I've seen the guardianship issues from the federal offerings all the way down to the state level, and obviously very thankful for a lot of the steps we've taken here in Florida to ensure that we have a better system. Obviously, Representative Burton's been one of the champions of that, and we're appreciative of that, along with Senator Pasadomo. In terms of what we really see, I can't second enough the need for a database, some form of statewide database that shares information, tracks the issues, so we can have actual numbers and ideas of where the abuses or what abuses are occurring, how frequent. Just to have that kind of information is key. And then if I'm going to do a secondary that hasn't been said, you know, AARP's mission is to empower people to live as they age, as they choose. And so in line with our mission, obviously with guardianship, we would love to ensure that less restrictive alternatives are exhausted prior to a guardianship being put in place. And so somehow, you know, maybe this task force can ensure that, you know, the courts do evaluate and use less restrictive alternatives if appropriate prior to determining a guardianship is required. So thank you guys. I look forward to it and look forward to seeing everybody next week.
Thank you, Zane. Certainly appreciate it. Now turn to Sancha Brennan. Nice to have you as part of this. And if you would please introduce yourself and tell us your priority.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to be here with everyone. Yes, my name is Sancha Brennan, and I am I've been practicing guardianship law for more than 20 years. I'm not going to go into details about how long exactly, but in
You were
Orange,
12 when
Osceola.
you started.
Pardon me, Judge?
He said you
I
were
was
12
12
when
when I
you started.
started. You were, yes, a phenom in law school, right? But I practiced in Orange, Osceola, Seminole, Lake counties in Central Florida, representing both private and professional guardians. I also represent the Osceola County Council on Aging as a statewide public guardianship office. I do a lot of pro bono work, and I have represented alleged incapacitated persons as well. I also am a mother of a child with disabilities, so this is very close to my heart, guardianships. My role here generally, coming from the real property, probate, and trust law section of the Florida Bar, I'm a former, well, not former, current chair of the Continuing Legal Education Committee for the section, the co-chair of the Guardianship Task Force that has produced, as I'm sure you know, the drafted proposed Chapter 745, which would be a complete rewrite of the Guardianship Code. I have served as a director of the Central Florida State Guardianship Association previously, and am the author of the updates for the Florida Guardianship Law and Procedure book that has been, oh gosh, I've been doing those updates for probably 12 years. We'll eventually have a new edition coming out. And I am an advisory member for the Florida Fiduciary, Professional Fiduciary Council, excuse me, I'll get that out. I have a lot of different perspectives coming in and joining this task force, but I'm very glad to hear all of the comments about data. I think that, you know, generally speaking, we're supportive of what Mr. Palmieri was mentioning earlier. I think having some kind of resource like that will be extremely helpful. I actually think that Florida has a pretty good guardianship law, but it can be improved, and that's what we've been trying to do for Chapter 745. I know there have been a lot of comments about things that are going on in the news, and I don't, you know, we want to make sure those kinds of things don't happen in Florida, the Britney Spears situation. And I think that what we've done in 745 actually helps to make sure that doesn't happen. Make sure that we've got attorneys representing alleged incapacitated persons who have enough knowledge about guardianship law. One of the things too, when our task force was originally started, we noticed just the fact that guardianship law was not applied throughout the state in the same way, and that really is a big problem. So we want to make sure that we've got a, you know, cohesion, and that it, you know, that the laws are uniformly applied. And I think that that's important going forward. Although, you know, we want to make sure that our judiciary has the ability to make decisions that are going to be more specific to their areas. And, you know, I think that that comes into one of those. And I know, Judge, that you will understand and agree with that too. You know, it's different in Miami than it is in Orange County. Just the market's different. So I have with me today Nick Curley, who may have been introduced earlier, who's the former chair of the Guardianship Law Committee.
He's an all-around great guy.
He says he's an all-around great guy, but I could vouch for him too. With our hearing and court schedules, I'm not sure that I can be at every one of the meetings, so he and I are going to play a tag team effort. And we want to be a resource for this committee. I don't know that we have a particular goal in mind, but definitely want to be a resource, so that we're here for you to assist and be supportive. And I would like to add on to what Shannon mentioned. You know, as with regard to the data, data mining was the first thing that came to mind, but that's kind of what it is. But, you know, gathering the information, I do think that we want to be careful with the words privacy and the alleged incapacitated person's privacy, and be particularly more careful about that as we're gathering all of this information in one place. But thank you very much for inviting us. I'm glad to be here and look forward to seeing what we can accomplish.
Thank you, Sancha, and appreciate you. You know, when you're in private practice, and I was a law firm administrator, executive director of a law firm for 20 some years, anytime you're not billing for your work, it's tough in a law firm. So we appreciate the attorneys who are giving up their billable hours to be part of this task force. We realize that is a sacrifice, but thank you. Viviana, certainly appreciate you being part of it and being so patient. We want to hear from you, please.
Hi, everyone. My name is Viviana Moniga Lopez, and I am an attorney at Disability Rights Florida. My pronouns are she, her. I'm really excited to be in this task force and encouraged that we are looking into improving the guardianship system. At Disability Rights Florida, we are the organization that people call when things go wrong. So we have seen a lot of the failings of the system and are prepared and excited to give our advice about how it could be better. I will take the liberty of saying that I think we really need, or I know we really need, a person who's been directly impacted by the guardianship system to be a voting member of this committee. And I encourage us to make that addition. I think we are making decisions that will affect their lives. And so people who will have to live with the consequences of our decisions should be here offering their perspective. I'm encouraged and excited to talk about supported decision-making as an alternative to guardianship. That's what I spend 100% of my time doing. That's an alternative to guardianship that allows people with disabilities to make their own decisions with the support of people they trust and to keep their rights. I'd also like to talk about other alternatives to guardianship. Like Zane said, I think it's really important that we exhaust all of those before we do guardianship. The overutilization of guardianship and how it is that that happens, better training for judges to understand what the possibilities are, what they can order, better training for examining committee members who are doing these evaluations, and then giving limited information to judges who then have a very tough decision to make. I like to address the school to guardianship pipeline. We see a lot of people with disabilities who, when they're about to turn 18, schools start to tell their parents, if you don't get guardianship, you won't be able to help your child anymore once they're an adult. Of course, that's not true, but it would scare any parent. The foster care to guardianship pipeline is also one that we would like to see addressed. Oftentimes, youth in foster care who have a disability, that will be their transition plan, even though there may have been something less restrictive available for them. Of course, the rights of people under guardianship, making sure that guardians honor those, like their choice of where they'd like to live and the people who they'd like to see and interact with, and just better monitoring of guardians and the work that they do. I have a colleague who leads our project where we investigate representative payees for Social Security, and she has talked to me about what she calls zombie guardianships, guardianships where the court has closed them for one reason or another, but the guardian continues to act as the guardian by showing everyone their orders and letters of guardianship that are no longer active, and no one's there to help the person under guardianship either get their rights back or make sure that this person is no longer handling their affairs. So we've seen a couple of cases like that and are excited to think about how we can make sure that doesn't happen anymore.
Thank you. Those are great perspectives that you've just offered us and challenges that we can add to our list. Is Tamara Cribben on the call today from the Florida Public Guardian Coalition? I don't see her picture or name, so I'm just, maybe she's on the phone.
Yeah, Ken, let me unmute the lines really quickly just in case she's a call-in user today.
Thank you, Sarah. Have you unmuted them?
Yes.
Tamara, are you on the phone? And if so, we would like to recognize you, please. I don't hear her. Thank you, Sarah. I think we have a great laundry list. I will work with Tom Hall and Sarah in trying to organize those into some type of report that we will have ready before next week's meeting. I do want to bring up, and this really goes to the data thing too, but maybe wasn't mentioning, is the examining committees and how those are done from circuit to circuit, their membership, their effectiveness, how the data is collected on them. Is that evenly done throughout the state of Florida? So I think that needs to be, to me, part of our program as far as this wide range I'll put that under the umbrella of data. And I did appreciate it. One thing which seems to be a big concern is how does one get their rights restored in the process for that? Because that is something, again, I'm hearing you know, you're just seeing problems that, you know, a person maybe was temporarily due to medication or whatever, and or certain phase of life, and they go on and are again, and the process seems stacked against them to restore their rights. So I think that's something too, which would be good for us to take a look at. So those are my recommendations of things that I hope to accomplish as part of this task force. This was a very robust discussion today. I appreciate everyone's time. But before I leave, we have our current president of the Clerks Association. Again, I want to thank them for their sponsorship of this. And Angel Colanisa is the clerk from Manatee County. And Angel, if you can turn your camera on and just give us a few words of encouragement, that certainly would be appreciated, because as you can hear from the task we're about to undertake, we have a big job ahead of us. And so we need all of the support we can get. So any words of wisdom you have for us, we certainly appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Ken. I appreciate that. I wish you all the very best in your endeavor here, and I'm so excited to have this started. I think it's something needed. I echo a lot of the concerns and a lot of the comments that were made here today, and I think this is a wonderful group, and I think it's something the citizens of Florida can get excited about and be very proud of. And thank you for your leadership in moving forward with this. Thank you.
Thanks, Angel, and thanks for participating today. Certainly appreciate it. I'll call on any task force members who has any closing comments. And boy, group, we're pretty good. We said we're going to have this meeting from 12 to 1:30. It's 1:26 now. Y'all did a great job at staying on time. But anyone have any questions or comments or concerns before we have our meeting next week?
Clerk Burke, is there a way for me to either make a motion or proposal to get a member on this task force who is someone who's experienced guardianship?
You're certainly welcome to make that motion. I think we would all support it.
Okay, so I'll make that motion now. And I have someone I can recommend.
I think we have an activist on our task force here. That's good to see. Is there a second to that motion?
I second it.
And who was that, please?
Hillary Hogue.
Okay. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye, or raise your hand. We do that raise hand business. It's a tough one, this thing. Okay. And Viviana, would you get with me afterwards and we'll talk about that, please?
Yes, of course. Thank you all.
Okay, thank you. She gets things done. Tom Hall, we have a couple minutes. We would appreciate if you would introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself, since you'll be the main author of our report.
Thank you, Ken. As Ken said earlier, I was clerk of the court at the Florida Supreme Court for 13 years. And before that, I was in the court system for a long time, working at 3 different appellate courts. I've been working with the clerks now in various capacities as a consultant for the past, I think it's going on 8 years now. And I've really enjoyed the various different things you get to do in doing that. And one of those is now discovering what guardianship is all about. I had no knowledge of what happens in guardianship other than reading the occasional bad story in the papers. But since that time, and since I've started staffing this, I've been doing a lot of research on what is happening around the country. Almost everything we had said today is the kind of stuff that I see happening nationwide and the kinds of proposals that are occurring in other states. So I think at least preliminarily here, we're very, very much on track. I plan to start working on the report right away, and we will submit drafts as we go so that you don't get some big long report at the very end, although we are going to have a meeting specifically for the purpose of approving the final report. And as it says in the guidelines, if people want to write a minority view, we're going to welcome and encourage that as well. But I'll be giving drafts as we go so that we can get preliminary approvals on the approvals of the draft as we go, so that you don't have a huge thing to deal with at the very end. And I think that's it, Ken, unless you have anything else to add.
We'll get more into that next week if any questions on.
Can I say something quickly?
Yes, whoever that is.
That is Hillary Hogan. I thank you. And I'll just mention one thing, because I'll just keep going on about a lot of times either the AIP, which stands for alleged incapacitated person, or the ward, their presence is waived at court. One of the few good things about COVID is Zoom, WebEx, Blue Jeans, whatever court system, teleconference for the hearings go with, is there is absolutely no reason, unless the ward or AIP, I would think, is so incapacitated that they cannot enunciate their wants and needs. Too many times we have gone to hearings and the ward's presence is waived. The judge doesn't even put eyes on them or speak to them, and they are not able to voice their wants and needs. And that is completely unacceptable. Another thing, hearings are constantly closed, even to advocates and activists like myself and a few others on the task force. We need to have these hearings, at least an advocate or an activist who can sign an affidavit if the attorneys would like. But we need to have someone on the ward side as well, from the public, someone like me that devotes their life. And I thank you. And
Thank you, Hillary. And we'll certainly add this to the list of items being just brought up today. These do need to be addressed.
Right, and if there are any victims listening, I know that Chair Burke would like to hear your comments as well. Thank you.
Thank you. And of course, today we're not going to have public comments, but our meeting next week we will, and all future meetings will be a time segmented for public comments. The last thing, and I know we're 1 minute past due, is our other staff person is Sarah Sanders. Sarah, would you please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself to the group? You've been getting lots of emails from Sarah, so you might as well see her and hear.
Yes, well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm really excited to be a part of this. My name is Sarah Sanders Bramer. I had a COVID wedding last year. I have been at the association for almost 13 years, and my primary role is in the legislative and public affairs department of the association, which of course provides a good segue to guardianship issues, at least from the legislative perspective. So like Tom, I am excited to learn more and learn from you, and look forward to hopefully meeting all of you next week in Clearwater. So thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. And I'll just conclude the meeting with thanking our staff support and Tom and Sarah. They've been wonderful to deal with. And thank all of you for your tremendous dedication to the work that we're about to undertake. Look forward to seeing you next Wednesday. This meeting is now adjourned.